Our story unfolds in the heart of a tranquil suburban neighborhood, where a young woman named Sarah began a new chapter in her life. Fresh out of college, she moved into a charming one-bedroom apartment, excited about the peaceful surroundings. The neighborhood was a picture-perfect representation of suburban life, with well-tended lawns and welcoming neighbors. Among those neighbors was James, a middle-aged man who, in the beginning, presented himself as a friendly and unassuming neighbor. Sarah had high hopes for her new life in this quiet neighborhood. Her apartment was cozy, the rent was affordable, and the neighbors seemed friendly. She quickly settled into her new routine, unpacking her belongings and decorating her space with a youthful exuberance. Her future looked bright. In the early days, James appeared to be the epitome of a good neighbor. He would often greet Sarah with a warm smile and engage in polite conversation. Their initial interactions were pleasant, filled with pleasantries and small talk about the weather, their occupations, and the mundane details of their daily lives. Sarah felt lucky to have such a seemingly friendly neighbor. Little did she know that behind this facade lay a dark secret, a chilling tale that would come to haunt her. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah noticed unsettling shifts in James' behavior. Their friendly conversations began to take a darker turn, and James's presence seemed to grow more ominous. He would linger near her apartment door, his greetings evolving into intrusive interrogations. Questions about her daily routine and personal life began to make her uncomfortable. His questions became increasingly personal, delving into Sarah's private life and prying for information about her daily schedule. Sarah began to feel an intense discomfort in his presence, sensing that something was terribly wrong. It wasn't long before she discovered that her experience was not isolated. Other residents of the building had their own eerie encounters with James. As time passed, James' actions descended into a sinister abyss. He started leaving disturbing notes and bizarre gifts on Sarah's doorstep. The notes were filled with menacing messages and unsettling drawings, hinting at unspeakable violence. The gifts he left behind were equally chilling, from stuffed animals with their heads crudely removed to inexplicable, ominous objects. The horror enveloping Sarah intensified as it became apparent that James was obsessed with her. Every aspect of her life was under his surveillance, and his presence seemed to be an ever-present, malevolent specter. Frightened and vulnerable, Sarah turned to the authorities and her property management for help, only to find their responses slow and insufficient. The relentless torment continued. Sarah's life turned into a waking nightmare, her apartment a prison, and James the tormentor from her worst nightmares. She started to suffer from sleepless nights, panic attacks, and the constant fear of what James might do next. With no respite from the ceaseless harassment and a growing sense of dread, Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands. She installed security cameras all around her apartment, capturing every unnerving interaction with James. In addition, she sought a restraining order against him, hoping the law would finally protect her. But James' actions grew even more erratic and menacing. He began vandalizing her property, smashing windows, and sending her messages filled with deranged threats. The legal system proved ineffective against a neighbor who had descended into madness, and Sarah's life remained a living nightmare. After enduring months of torment and living in perpetual fear, Sarah made the heart-wrenching decision to leave her apartment and the neighborhood she had once cherished. She abandoned the place she had called home, all because of a neighbor who had turned her life into a horrifying ordeal. While horror stories often draw from supernatural elements and fictional horrors, the chilling narrative of Sarah's neighbor serves as a stark reminder that real-life horrors can be equally, if not more, terrifying. The nightmare she lived through underlines the fact that terror can lurk next door, devoid of any mysticism or folklore. Sarah's story is a testament to the human spirit's resilience and determination to survive in the face of unimaginable horrors. However, it also sheds light on the urgent need for improved systems and resources to protect individuals from the horrors they can encounter within their own communities. In this terrifying true story, we are reminded that the line between normalcy and a true horror story is far thinner than we'd like to believe. The nightmares of suburbia, the horrors of everyday life, and the chilling reality of a neighbor turned tormentor all serve as a haunting reminder that evil can be closer than we think, hidden behind innocent beginnings. In the peaceful suburban neighborhood of Oakwood Heights lived the Smith family. For years, they enjoyed a quiet and harmonious life in their quaint little home, which sat right next door to the Reynolds family. The Reynolds were considered ordinary neighbors, friendly and seemingly harmless. John and Lisa Smith often exchanged pleasantries with their neighbors, but had no reason to suspect the horrors that lurked behind the perfectly manicured lawn of the Reynolds residence. The Smiths had lived in Oakwood Heights for nearly a decade. They moved there seeking a tranquil life for their growing family, and the community did not disappoint. Everyone in the neighborhood knew each other, waved hello, and shared the occasional block party. It was the picture-perfect suburban setting, one that many would envy. Their lives seemed blissfully unremarkable. Just next door, the Reynolds, a family of 4, lived in a house with a white picket fence and a neatly trimmed garden. Mr. Reynolds, whose first name was Robert, was an affable man in his early 40s, known for his skills in gardening. His wife, Sarah, was a kind-hearted woman who often brought homemade pies to share with the neighbors. John and Lisa Smith, the quintessential American family, had 2 children, a daughter named Emma and a son named Daniel. The children frequently played in their spacious backyard, while the adults attended to their daily chores. Everything was so ordinary that it felt almost too perfect. Yet, as the saying goes, nothing is as it seems. It all began with small, subtle signs. Lisa Smith, while taking her evening walks, noticed that Mr. Reynolds, who was usually seen working on his garden, often glanced over at her with a peculiar intensity. His eyes followed her, not in the polite way of a neighbor exchanging pleasantries, but with an eerie focus that made her skin crawl. John, who was a pragmatic man, initially dismissed Lisa's concerns. He thought she was reading too much into it. Yet he couldn't ignore a growing unease that accompanied every encounter with Mr. Reynolds. Something about those watchful eyes unsettled him. Their family dog, Max, a loyal and friendly golden retriever, added another layer to the growing unease. Max, who had been around the Reynolds family numerous times, began barking incessantly whenever he approached their neighbor's fence. It wasn't the usual playful bark. It was a guttural, warning growl, as though he sensed something the Smiths could not. Lisa thought it was simply paranoia, but John felt an unsettling chill down his spine each time he crossed paths with Mr. Reynolds. There was a hollowness in his smile, a strange, distant look in his eyes that left John deeply troubled. One night, while John was working late at the office, Lisa had a terrifying experience that would change their lives forever. As she was getting ready for bed, in the quiet of their suburban home, she caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure peering through their bedroom window. Panic seized her, and she let out a blood-curdling scream. The intruder fled, but it didn't take long for her to realize that it was none other than their neighbor, Mr. Reynolds. Tears streamed down Lisa's face as she frantically dialed 911. She clutched the phone to her chest, trembling as she told the dispatcher what had just occurred. The intruder was their neighbor, she repeated, barely able to believe it herself. Within minutes, police cars descended upon their quiet street. Lisa's description of the intruder was enough to identify Mr. Reynolds as the culprit. He was arrested, and the Smiths watched in shock as the man who had lived next door for years was led away in handcuffs. The Smiths' home was turned into a crime scene, and detectives combed through every inch of their property. What they discovered was beyond disturbing. Mr. Reynolds had a secret room in his house filled with photographs of the Smith family, taken without their knowledge. He had been obsessively watching their every move, capturing intimate moments in their lives on film. Innocent family outings, celebrations, even moments in their own home had been documented without consent. The nightmare didn't end there. In his attic, the police found a collection of bizarre and disturbing memorabilia, mementos from other families in the neighborhood he had similarly stalked. There were diaries detailing their daily activities, collections of hair and clothing, and even newspaper clippings of local tragedies. Robert Reynolds had become a dark collector of the lives of his unsuspecting neighbors, and the evidence was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. A legal battle ensued, and the Reynolds family was swiftly ostracized by the community. The horrors of their neighbors' actions have shaken Oakwood Heights to its core. The trial revealed the full extent of Robert Reynolds' obsession and his chilling obsession with the Smiths. John and Lisa Smith, once a happy and unassuming couple, were now caught in the media frenzy surrounding the case. Their family was forever scarred by the knowledge that their neighbor had invaded their lives in the most unsettling way possible. It was a betrayal of trust that they could hardly comprehend. Robert Reynolds was convicted of numerous counts of invasion of privacy and stalking, and he was sentenced to a lengthy prison term. The Smiths, still reeling from the trauma, sought therapy and counseling to heal the emotional wounds inflicted by their once unassuming neighbor. The true horror of this story lies in its authenticity, serving as a grim reminder of the darkness that can reside behind seemingly ordinary neighbors. The Smiths, in their quiet suburban life, encountered a nightmare that would haunt them for years to come. This tale stands as a chilling testament to the idea that horror need not come from the supernatural or the mystical, but can manifest itself in the most mundane and unsuspecting corners of our lives. In the end, it is these real-life horrors that are the most terrifying, as they remind us of the fragility of our sense of security lurking just next door. The lesson is clear. Sometimes the monsters are not under our beds or in our closets, but right next door, disguised as everyday people. The Smith story is a harrowing example of how the line between ordinary and terrifying can blur, and the nightmare may be living right next door, hiding behind a friendly smile and well-tended garden. In a tranquil suburban neighborhood, a serene oasis where picket fences and neatly manicured lawns were the norm, our story unfolds. It was a dream come true for Sarah, her loving husband Mark, and their two young children, who had recently moved into a charming house at the end of a peaceful cul-de-sac. Their new neighbors were friendly, the streets were quiet, and life seemed to be the epitome of the American dream. The sun kissed the white picket fences as Sarah and Mark embraced the new beginning. Their children laughed and played, exploring the vast backyard. Life was perfect, and their dreams had taken the shape of a lovely suburban reality. However, the idyllic tranquility of their new life took an eerie twist when they discovered their next-door neighbor, Mr. Thompson. He was a man in his mid-50s, an eccentric recluse with a yard that was a chaotic mess of overgrown weeds, rusty car parts, and heaps of junk. But his oddities went far beyond mere clutter. At first, Sarah and Mark brushed off their neighbor's eccentricities. It was a diverse neighborhood after all, and people came in all shapes and sizes. However, the first unsettling incident would send shivers down their spines. Sarah was standing in the kitchen, gazing out of the window, lost in thought. She spotted Mr. Thompson sitting alone in his car, parked in front of their house. She thought it was just a random occurrence. A strange quirk of their peculiar neighbor, she reasoned. Yet, as days turned into weeks, an ominous unease began to grow like a storm brewing on the horizon. Mr. Thompson's car became a permanent fixture outside their home. He would sit for hours, just staring at their house. Things escalated on one eerie evening when Sarah was tucking her children into bed. A faint, rhythmic tapping sound echoed through the house. Her heart raced as she followed the noise, her body trembling. She had an inkling of what was happening. As she cautiously approached the source, she was struck with horror when she saw Mr. Thompson standing outside, peering through their window with an unnerving, unwavering gaze. Panic and fear engulfed Sarah, and she dialed the police in a frantic rush. She was terrified for her family's safety, and a dark shadow had fallen over their once tranquil lives. The police arrived swiftly, a beacon of hope amidst the nightmare. They interrogated Mr. Thompson, who initially feigned innocence, denying any wrongdoing. However, as the investigation unraveled, A chilling truth emerged that sent shivers down the spines of everyone involved. Mounting evidence linked Mr. Thompson to a string of disturbing incidents. Among the findings were clandestine photographs of Sarah and her family, taken without their knowledge or consent. A collection of cryptic notes was discovered hidden in his home, filled with bizarre ramblings about the family's daily routines, as if he were trying to insert himself into their lives in the most unsettling way. As the investigation deepened, it became evident that Mr. Thompson had obsessively documented the family's every move, from their comings and goings to their most private conversations. He had crossed the line from neighborly curiosity to invasive obsession. The once peaceful home of Sarah and Mark had transformed into a prison of fear, their sense of security obliterated by the sinister presence next door. Sarah and Mark found themselves confronted with a horrifying truth. They had unwittingly shared their life with a man who had grown increasingly fixated on their existence. The safety and comfort they had once taken for granted within their home had been stripped away, replaced by the fear of their neighbor's unpredictable behavior and the constant dread of his presence. The constant sensation of being watched, the violation of their privacy, and the emotional trauma they had endured weighed heavily on the family. Their once happy home had become a fortress of fear, and their lives were forever altered by the disconcerting proximity of Mr. Thompson. The story of Sarah, Mark, and Mr. Thompson serves as a chilling reminder that real-life horrors can unfurl in the most ordinary settings. The eerie neighbor narrative reflects the unsettling truth that danger can often lurk much closer to home than we would ever expect. This tale of paranoia, invasion of privacy, and fear is a stark reminder that our homes, our sanctuaries, can sometimes become the very place where our sense of security is shattered. Nonetheless, even amid the darkness, a glimmer of hope emerged. The resilience of this family in the face of danger is truly inspiring. They stood together, facing their fear head-on, and took every necessary step to protect their family and reclaim their sense of security. The lesson from this spine-tingling tale is clear. We should never underestimate the importance of feeling secure within our own homes. It is a fundamental human need, and when that safety is threatened, we must remain vigilant and proactive in safeguarding our peace and privacy. The bravery and determination of Sarah and Mark and their children serve as a testament to the indomitable strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity, demonstrating that even in the most harrowing of circumstances, there is always room for hope. Mark and Sarah decided to install security cameras around their property, not only to keep an eye on their own safety, but also as evidence of Mr. Thompson's unsettling behavior. They sought restraining orders and legal protection from the courts. Their friends and neighbors, once oblivious to the lurking danger, rallied behind them, offering support and keeping a watchful eye. In the courtroom, the truth emerged like a nightmare unveiled. Mr. Thompson was found guilty of stalking, invasion of privacy, and harassment. He was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, providing a sense of closure to the family he had terrorized. The family, scarred but not broken, slowly rebuilt their lives. The children, who had endured countless sleepless nights and fear-filled days, began to regain their sense of security. Mark and Sarah's bond grew stronger through the ordeal, and they taught their children the value of resilience, courage, and the unwavering love of the family. As the seasons changed and life began to return to a new sense of normalcy, the neighborhood that had once been their serene oasis was forever marked by the haunting presence of Mr. Thompson. The memory of those dark days still casts a shadow, but it was a reminder of the strength that could emerge in the face of adversity. In conclusion, this unsettling tale of the Thompsons and their neighbor serves as a stark reminder that danger can be lurking just beyond the comfort of our front door. The feeling of security in our homes is a precious one, and when that sanctuary is violated, it leaves deep scars. But it also highlights the resilience of the human spirit, the power of family bonds, and the support of a caring community. The story of the Thompsons, their invasion of privacy, and their eventual triumph over their neighbor's sinister obsession is a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. It's a chilling reminder that even in the most ordinary settings, we must remain vigilant and proactive in safeguarding our peace, security, and privacy. And in the darkest of times, there is always room for hope and the potential for healing and redemption.